Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I spent the last 2+ decades of my life. Yeah, I grew up in California, from 87 to 93. Then I moved out here to Utah in 93, but in 94 I started getting locked up, and pretty much, the history on that. So I spent over about 28 years of my life in prison. And my last bid, I did about 23 years and 8 months, close to 24 years. But just growing up out here in California and out here in Utah, I affiliate more with the West Coast, with dudes from the West Coast. Running around out here, I had a lot of homies that were Bloods and a lot of homies that were Crips. And like a lot of the polys, a lot of the Asian gangs, they either are running Bloods or Crips. Our gang, TOP, we didn't run, Crips or Blood. We used to have homies, like some of the older homies were OC, Oriental Crip, and some of the other homies were LB, Loud Bloods. But when they start hanging out together out here, we came to the understanding that, man, we ain't really about that color, but we just about the homies, the Asian homies. And our color is the white rag. We adopted the white rag from the story that I got because, there was a generation before me, before I got involved. They just had a Vietnamese homie, CBT. I think his name is Chris Van Tran. And he had died in a car accident, but the homie said that he used to always, have the white rag on his head, sport that white rag. So the homies adopted that color in remembrance of him, to pay homage to the homie. So from there on, our color was white. So going to the feds, like I said, you got some of the Asian homies, some of the poly homies. They either, they were from Blood gangs and Crip gangs, but there's a difference between, like, I don't say, oh, why you ain't claiming Bloods or you ain't claiming Crip, because these dudes are from Asian gangs that happen to be Crip, or Asian gangs, poly gangs that happen to be Bloods. So there is still a separation between, their Crip gang and the black Crip gangs out of LA. So most of the homies that run Crip and Blood, they come in there and they run Asian Islander. But because of that, we end up having a pretty good rapport with the Crips and the Bloods and the feds. And so through the course of my bid, I've always functioned with them because the homies introduce you or whatever, then you get to know them and you're having respect for them, liking them, you build a relationship. So everywhere I go after I was in Lompoc, I always knew somebody that was in Lompoc or Victorville or Atwater with me. So when I do relate to the blacks, most of them are all usually Crips or Bloods. Like along the way, I've met some Latin Kings and some GDs and some Vice Lords that I got tight with. But for the majority, I'm not saying I align myself with the West Coast Crips or Bloods or anything like that, because all those relationships is always on a personal relationship. When I was in Victorville and I got into a funk with the homies, with the other Islanders, a couple dudes from the East Coast Crips, Slim and Droopy, they pulled up on me and they're like, man, what's up, man? We got you, And when I say East Coast Crip, these guys are all out of LA. They just call East Coast Crip. And a couple Blood homies, like one of them, Chucky Brim. Me and him, we're about the same age. We practically grew up together in Lompoc, and we got really tight. And again, when he sees me about to get into something or whatever, he's always pulling up. And they even had a meeting with all the Blood homies. And in the meeting, Chucky Brim told him, hey, man, if Mason get into it, I'm going to get into it. And he had enough respect from all his homeboys that they're like, yeah, if you go, we go. And if you're going with Mesa, then we're going with Mesa. You know, not everybody can do that. You know, but if you're respected by your hood, you're respected by your homies, and you make a declaration, hey man, I function with so and so tough. That's my friend. If I see him getting into it, I'm gonna have his back. And the same thing amongst us. Like we have people in our car that have close relationship with different races, with different dudes from different gangs that I might not function with, but they live in a unit with them dudes and they function with them real tough and they build a rapport. But they come out and say, hey man, if so and so get into it, I'm just giving you guys a heads up. I'm gonna get into it. And as a man, you have to respect that because you don't want to respect somebody that you sit there, you see them together all the time, eating, drinking, hustling together. But then when shit pops off, they get up and like, oh, that ain't got nothing to do with me. That's a black issue, or that's a Mexican issue, or that's a white issue. Now, for me, the way I function, if I break bread with you and if we're doing something and something pops off involving you, I'm not gonna get up and leave you to the wolves. That's just not the way, my mind works. That's not the way my heart works. And I tell anybody that if you function with somebody and you are able to get up and you see a group of dudes coming to get the dude that you fuck with, about to slaughter him, and in your mind, you can justify saying, oh, that ain't got nothing to do with me, and get up and walk away from him and leave him to the wolves, man, don't fuck with me because I'm, I don't understand that mentality, and I don't want people that with that kind of mentality around me. So through the course of my bid, there's been incidents that didn't have nothing to do with me, but had to do with, homies I fuck with, dudes I fuck with, that we stepped up to the plate for. One of the and I'm just sharing this just to give you a background in the relationship that I had with some of these individuals. Like one of the incidents, I'm coming in the unit. I live in 2A in Atwater, and the homie G from Sacramento was one of the dudes I functioned with real tough. It was G, Goldie. I think they might have called him Lil Goldie or Baby Goldie because his dad was Big Goldie, and Doug. They lived in cell 101, the cell that I ended up taking over a few months later. But we come in, and the Crips are upstairs in front of G cell. G live in 201, and in there's only like about 4 or 5 Crips in the block. But when it comes to the DC, they call them the DMV, DC, Baltimore, Virginia, they all Maryland, they're all a coalition. Like they all might not like each other because they all get broken down to neighborhoods or whatever region and all that. But for the most part, it's known in the feds that there's a coalition called the DMV. That's DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and all the surrounding areas, right? So when I come in, there's a dude named Lowe. I think Lowe's out of New York, but for some reason he always gets lumped in with the DMV, and he's pretty much the spokesperson for that area in our block. So we come out, him and G, they're in face to face in a conversation with all their homies behind them. But I look up and I see there's only like 4 or 5, the Crip homies, G and their homies, and Low, he's got like 10 or 12 dudes behind him. So when I come through, I look up, Bryson's sitting at the table, and I see, and I'm looking for Pooey, the homie, the Simone homie, but he's in the shower. So I tell Bryson and Marcelli Semi, I say, hey, let's go. What's up? I point up, they looked up. So we mobbed up the stairs and go and stand behind G and G and the rest of the Crips. But at this time, like I said, I was only familiar with 3 of them, which was G, Goldie, and Doug. And the other ones, they were all brand new. So I wasn't really sure outside of those 3 who was who. Because, they're all black, right? And we haven't got enough time to, like, know exactly who everybody is, because when they come sit down, sometimes they watch over there in the Crip TV, but that doesn't mean necessarily they're all Crips. It's pretty much just a black TV, and then they had a sports TV, which later on the DC and them congregated and end up taking over the TV area. So we go up there, and for us, for me, it's just aid and assist. I mean, nothing happened over it. They were arguing over about a sale and all this and that, but everything got mediated. But when I looked up, they were outnumbered, and these are the dudes I functioned with in the block. So, like I said, if I fuck with you, homie, and I know you're a good dude, and I see the odds is against you, maybe it's not my place or whatever, but as a friend, I'm gonna step up. And after the smoke clears, if my homies, the Asian Islanders, have issues with my actions, then I'll deal with the repercussion. I'll deal with the consequences. You know what I mean? I don't do things thinking about the consequences. I do things because I feel they're the right thing to do. And if somebody has an issue with that later on, then again, we'll deal with it. So needless to say, we were pretty close with the homies in that block. And there's one Crip homie, Doug, who we got really tight with. And the story that I'm about to share to you is just like, you know, when you're close to somebody, when you care about somebody and you become friends or homies or whatever, and they don't live up to your expectation, it's disappointing, right? Because especially when you're willing to ride for them, but then you find out that they're not willing to ride for themselves, or that there are things that aren't completely kosher with them. But being in two different cars, I don't get to like look up your background or anything like that. I don't get to see what really goes on with you personally in a sale or anything. From us, it's just pretty much just the relationship that we build, the things that we see throughout the time that we were in the unit. And Doug, he played on our football team. This dude is fast as lightning, fast as shit, right? And he was cool as fuck, man. We ate together, we functioned, we hang out, we ball together, all that. We were homies, right? So one day Doug, he works in the visiting room, right? So one day he comes over and he calls me and Pooey over and says, hey man, come here. So he calls us in the room. He already got some sticks rolled up. Sticks are little stick of weed. They're the size of a toothpick, like literally the size of a toothpick, but not as thick, not as full. But being in prison, your system is so clean, like all you need is some crumbs and you can get high, right? So, when you get a joint rolled up that's the size of a toothpick, it's pretty fat, right? So he pulls me and Pooey in, and he lights us up, and we're smoking in there. And after we finish smoking, he drops a nugget, like maybe the size of my pinky, like this. Like I said, this is probably not even enough for you guys out here for a hit. But in there, this shit goes for about $100, $150 an hour. I mean, $100, $150 a bag. So he drops a nugget for me and Pooey. And he's like, hey man, don't trip, man. It's just the beginning. I got a lick. Like I said, he worked in the visiting room. I'm not gonna go into the details and how he was bringing it in, moving it, all that. He told us all the breakdown and stuff. I was like, hey, Doug, just we see you when you when you bring it over, we'll see you, but we don't need to know all the rest of the details, right? Because when you're friends with somebody, you like to share everything. But for me, when I start hearing people tell me their secrets, I stop it because I don't want to be on a short list. Meaning that if something goes wrong, they can't be like, oh, damn, I told Mesa about that shit. What if he said something? I don't want to be that person. So I never want to know anything about anything that's going on unless it's detrimental to my security, right? But all the hustling stuff, the only thing I care about is when it's time to do business, I can do business with you. Other than that, I keep it moving. So Doug comes to us, smokes us up, and drops a nugget, for me and Pooey for later. And he's like, "Hey man, when uh when I get back, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. When I get back, we're gonna do something." So he goes to work. Like I say, he works in a visiting room, but he doesn't come back. He goes to work and he doesn't come back. So we find out, through the rumor mill on a compound that they had busted a package in the visiting room. So, like I said, I don't ask a lot of questions. The only person I know that's locked up is Doug. I don't know if anybody else is locked up or anything like that over it, right? So about a month later, Doug comes back out of the chute. So when he comes out, there's a lot of politics going on that I can see between the Crips and the Bay Area, right? Rumor was that when the package got busted, Doug not kinda, but said something about whose package and stuff it was. So, but when it comes to things like this, there's no proof. You can't produce a black and white. You can't produce a statement. So it's just a gray area. So Doug comes back out of the shoe, and the politics starts, right? But when Doug comes out, he comes and hollers at me and Pooey. Pooey's my road dog over there in Atwater. We lived in the same block. We did pretty much everything together. And our table is right there in front of their cell. They live in 101. As soon as you step out, the table and TV for us is right there. So we're always right there. So we're always seeing each other when we're interacting throughout the unit. So he comes over there and he tries to explain himself like, "Yeah, man, that shit, because I told you that day that he smoked us out. He was like, hey, I'm gonna go to work. When I come back, I'm gonna break you guys off." But he never was able to come back because I guess whatever had happened back there. So he's trying to tell us that they busted something in there. They locked him up, put him under investigation and let him out. So through the course of the next few days, I'm having a conversation with G, the Crip homie from Sacramento, and he's like, "Yeah, these dudes over there in the Bay Area dudes are trying to push up, talking about Doug said something, but G fuck with Doug tough." And he's like, "Man, Doug ain't said nothing. I mean, because he cared about Doug and he believed the homie. Like, when a conversation like this, if you got one side saying something without being able to produce the paperwork, at the end of the day, it's going to be a crash. Because one, you can't allow people on a compound to be spreading rumors about you and your homies or one of your homeboys. So whoever's saying that, it's got to get dealt with. If your homeboy is guilty, he's got to get dealt with. But there is no proof of his guilt, then he has to go deal with whoever's put him out there. Because if you let the rumor mill go, it's going to look bad. Because now, from our perspective, if somebody accusing you of something, accusing you of being a bitch, of being a rat or a buster or whatever, if somebody's out there accusing you of that shit and you know who's accusing you and you don't go correct it, correcting it means you don't go over there and punish dude, bust his head. From outside looking in, from the perception of where we stand, we're going to assume that whatever dude is saying about you is true. Because if it wasn't true, then his job be busted. I emphasize in the penitentiary, your reputation, your image is all you have to go by. What people perceive of you is what really matters. People's like, "Oh, I don't care what anybody else think. I know what it is. I'm cool with myself." You can say that even out here in the world. You could tell People that, hey, I'm a good dude. You can believe that you're a good dude, but everybody around you think you're a piece of shit. Other people's gonna think you're a piece of shit too. You know, you have a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't really care what people think about me," but that's not true. What other people perceive, what other people think about us, is how we get our status. You know, if everybody think you're a gangster, if everybody think you're an OG, if everybody give you that respect as the big homie, then that's what you is. You know, they elevate you that. But if you run around thinking you're a big homie, but all your homies looking at you like you're a fucking lame, then you're a fucking lame. Because if you weren't, people wouldn't have that opinion of you. So, you know, however you want to say it, however you want to make excuses or whatever, that you don't care about what other people think, it's what the opinion of other people is really how you get your respect, how you move around, and all that. If people, when I'm introducing somebody, if somebody comes and introduce me to one of their homies, they're gonna stamp me and say, "Yeah, it's the good homie right here." Right? It doesn't matter what the fuck I say out my mouth. I can say whatever I want to say. I can convince you. I can make my lips move and make whatever sound I come out. But if the people around me is saying things that are contradicting to what I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to tell you, hey, I'm a good dude. I'm a stand-up dude. I keep my word, so on and so forth. But everybody around me say, man, don't trust that motherfucker. He's a scandalous dude. People is gonna take the people word around you more than before they take yours, because they don't know you. They have to see that you conduct yourself a certain way. But if you conduct yourself a certain way, then the opinion of you from others should never contradict what you represent. If I tell you, hey man, I'm a good dude, man, you know what I mean? I keep my word, I'm honorable, I'm down, and all that. And if I'm really that dude, then everybody around me is gonna repeat the same shit. It's gonna tell you, hey, dude's for real, you know? And if they say anything different, it's because they had experience that showed them different. And there's a lot of people saying something different, then those means a lot of those people had experience with you showing that you're not exactly what the fuck you say you are, right? So that's why you can't allow rumors, you can't allow people disrespecting you, because if somebody's slandering your name in any type of way, if they're saying you're a check-in, or you're a check-in, or you was on another yard and you ran off, and you didn't run off, well, you need to go bust that dude in the mouth. Because if you don't, then everybody's gonna assume that you're a check-in. Then when it get back to your homie's gonna be like, hey homie, you got a dude over here saying this and that, this and some more shit about you. What's up? They're looking at you like you need to go, you know, quiet that noise, shut that noise down. And if you don't, then they're gonna assume that that shit is true and deal with you. Now let's say it ain't true, but you're just scary. You just don't want to get in no funk. You know what I mean? Well, if you're scary, they're gonna remove you too, because we are in a hostile environment, and we don't want no scary dudes around us. We don't want any dudes that's gonna allow somebody to disrespect them, that's gonna allow anybody else to slander their name. Because one, that makes your car look bad. If you got dudes that ride around in your car and everybody's telling you, hey, that dude's a fucking rat, that dude's a fucking rat, and you're hanging out with all these dudes that everybody on the compound knows is fucking hot, knows is busters, well, a lot of people ain't gonna really fuck with you. And the only people that's gonna really fuck with you is the same kind of dude that don't give a fuck about all that shit, and we put them in a different category, and we treat them a little different, right? So, you know, the politics is going, things are heating up. You know, I pull up on G, I'm like, man, what's up, man? Like, man, we're gonna go holler at this dude in the Bay Area, because they saying that Doug did this and that. And I know Doug didn't do it. You know, and Doug and G is standing on that, because, you know, he's gonna take the homie's word for it, and he's willing to stand on it and ride on that. So a few days go by, I'm out in the yard, and I see Goldie out in the yard. I'm like, damn, what happened, Goldie? Because Goldie lived in my block, 2A in 101. He was Doug Selly. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, man, I moved over to the west side. He moved over to the west side with one of his homies. I'm like, man, what's up? He said, man, I can't be living there with that dude. So when me and Goldie had that conversation on the on the yard, and he told, and he had moved unit to get away from Doug. That kind of, you know, put my perspective that, hey, maybe some of the things that was going on being said about Doug is true, right? So now I have to look at the situation with a critical eye, because Doug still live in my block, and he's still the homie. But for me, homie, like, when you don't live up to what you're supposed to, I have no problem cutting you off quick. You know, I don't waste no tears, I don't waste no energies, because I'm living my life the way I'm supposed to. I'm holding true to the things that I believe in, and I'd be damned if motherfuckers sitting around faking. But you know, I don't put it on my sleeve. I don't go in the blog like, damn, what the fuck, this and that. It's just, it makes you, you know, start considering things, right? So another few days go by, they're still politicking, and now it gets to a point where there's nothing else to say about. There's nothing else to talk about, because the Bay Area dudes are standing on what they're saying. They're like, nah, dude said something. However, they got the evidence. I wasn't privy to all the details, but they're standing on it. They're like, nah, man, he said something. And so the Crip homies, they're like, shit, he's saying he didn't. So now they're pushing up on Doug that he got to go deal with the situation, because there's somebody accusing him of, you know, blowing up the lick, or when the lick got busted, putting somebody's name out there. So on the day they're supposed to go out in the yard and have this confrontation, Doug disappears. You know, SIS comes and picks him up. Because, you know, we come back out from the yard. I'm out there running my poker table. I come back out in the yard, and like I said, they live in 101. Our table is right in front of it. So when you go in, you see the doors locked. And so I go up to G. I'm like, what's up, man? What happened with Doug? That man, SIS came and picked him up. You know, SIS ain't gonna come pick you up unless you make that phone call. You know, in every unit, there's a hotline that says, you know, call SIS. I mean, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a hotline for you to inform on people. So it's either somebody else calling him, talking about, oh, we gotta remove Doug off the yard, or he's gonna get butchered, or Doug calls on himself, like, hey, you gotta come remove me off the yard before I get into a funk. But usually, you know, when people are trying to get you, they're not gonna call the police on you. They're gonna try to get you. Nine times out of ten, it's either dude themselves that call to get picked up, or one of their homies, because their homies don't want the funk or whatever. And I say that because, again, man, I repeat, you got a lot of dudes that act like they about it, man. A lot of dudes, you know, sell them tickets, but cut that check. But when it's time to cash in, it's a different story. And in the feds, they make it so easy for you to be sneaky, meaning drop a kite to the SIS or get on the phone and call them like you call your family, that a lot of these dudes slip through under the radar. But just like everything else in there, eventually, when you're moving around and operating in that space, eventually somebody's gonna catch up to you. But on this situation, they came, picked up Doug, and nothing happened over it. But for me, like I said, Doug was a friend of mine. You know, I fuck with him, and it's just disappointing. And there's a lot of stories like that I have dudes that I got to respect and got to like, but at the end of the day, they don't turn out to be, you know, the image that they present, or the thing that I hope they were. But you know, I learned through my life that there's a lot of disappointment when you have expectations for people. But that doesn't stop me from having expectations, you know, because I carry myself a certain way, so I expect everybody to come around me to be that. But I no longer get disappointed as far as like my feelings are hurt or anything. If somebody doesn't live up to it, I just acknowledge it, accept it, and move on. Welcome to the USP.